EA is on Twitch. Join us Wednesday nights when Alistair, that's me, reads a bedtime story, and Sunday mornings for a few hours of chill gaming. Plus interviews, special guests, pickup streams, and more. Visit twitch.tv/EA podcasts and follow us to be notified when we go live. Plus access VODs of past broadcasts.
Escape Pod. Episode 906. Trash. By Marie Vibert. Flashback Friday.
Hello and welcome to Escape Pod, your weekly science fiction podcast. I'm Valerie Valdez, your host for this episode. Our story this week is Trash by Marie Vibert. It was first published by us as episode 467 in November 2014. This story contains mild language that may be unsuitable for young listeners. Marie Vibert has sold over 70 short stories, dozens of poems, and a few interactive fictions and comics. Her first novella, The Unlikely Heroines of Callisto Station, is the cover story for the July 2021 Analog magazine, and her debut novel, Galactic Hellcats, about a female biker gang in outer space rescuing a gay prince, came out in March of 2021. By day, she is a computer programmer in Cleveland, Ohio. Our narrator, Tatiana Gray, is a critically acclaimed actress of stage, screen, and the audio booth. She has been nominated for dozens of fancy awards, but hasn't won a single damn thing. She lives in Brooklyn, New York. See more about Tatiana at tatianagray.com. Now, get ready to hear some janitors take out a particularly big hunk of space trash, because it's story time.
Trash by Marie Vibert, narrated by Tatiana Gomber. Nanley was a woman with the sort of past that necessitated moving to a non-extradition treaty country. But that didn't mean she hadn't planned on enjoying her retirement on Luna Colony. She was facilities manager, a polite term for the boss of all janitors. Her staff jumped anxiously at her every glance, and waste was down 9% since she had taken office. She was still important. The life of the colony depended on her work. No one bothered her, which was fortunate, given how she used to deal with people who bothered her. Luna Colony concerned itself with maintaining the ungodly huge array on the dark side of the moon and serving as a way station between Earth's inconvenient atmosphere and the rest of the universe. Nanley concerned herself with minding her own business. She was at her desk when the alarms started. A male voice recorded long ago grunted, "Evacuate. Imminent danger of decompression. Evacuate." No doubt he had thought he sounded important and tough. Nanley sighed and locked her workstation. Vince, her assistant, fell to a halt against the door as she was picking up her cane. "Boss, the station." "Yes, I heard. I do have 2 working ears. Probably a drill, but gather everyone in the garage." Vince's hazel eyes just about vibrated so wide open she could see the white all the way around the iris. "It isn't a drill. This is, we could all die tonight, bad news." Nanley paused, half on her cane, half on the edge of the desk, pulling herself out of the chair. She fell back into the seat. She could feel her hot tub calling her. Metaphorical death or literal? "Literal! 2 tons of titanium on a crash course with our dome." He tapped her desk surface, hurriedly typing in his password and pulling up a document, which he rotated with a flick of his hand and pointed at her. It was an orbit decay projection. They always looked the same. "And this is too big for the dome to handle?" "It'll crack us like an egg?" Vince sounded excited, almost gleeful at the prospect. He was young. "What the hell is it?" "The last stage of a Saturn V rocket. sucker's been orbiting Luna for 100 years. Maybe it got hit by some other debris. Maybe it's just decided now's the time to land. Nanley stopped herself from asking, Saturn what? Because Vince was looking at her like he'd just won the lottery. Does Trey know about this? Trey was the mayor of the colony, Nanley's boss. Vince rolled his eyes. Of course Trey knows. Like that was any less valid a question than asking her if she had heard the evacuation announcement. Nanley wasn't going to waste breath pointing it out. He sent me to tell you that we've got a little less than a day. Well, pack shit up. She poked her cane against the wall behind her to get a little boost forward. Get Percy and take the organic filters offline. They won't survive decompression. Also, no! We've got a day to try and save the colony. Nanley arched an eyebrow. We? Trey has put waste management on this. Everyone else is booking it. Why the hell is this my jurisdiction? Because, he smiled ruefully, it's trash. With surprising strength, Nanley pushed Vince out of her way and started down the corridor. She didn't bother playing up her limp like she usually did. It never hurts to be underestimated. Where is he? Where is Trey? He's gone. Central administration relocated before the alarm. Damn! Nanley bounced upward as she struck the floor with her cane. Vince ducked as she whirled in place and started toward the equipment bays. If we're staying, our gear is staying. Don't tell me that coward commandeered a single maintenance vehicle. Vince bit his lip and ran after Nanley. Every maintenance worker on call was soon gathered in Nanley's office, bent over the desk, which displayed all the intelligence they had so far. Janice, the garage head, still out of breath from locking down every remaining tractor, said, So, we shoot it down? With what? Vince said. Nanley called up the colony master plans. Doesn't the station have some emergency cannon or something? Old Percy, who'd worked on the colony since it was built, shook his head. We had 2 guns put in for just this sort of thing, but the ammo was all sold back in 22 when the budget was tight. Plus, the things ain't been fired up in 50 years. Anyway, it wouldn't work. Too much mass. Nanley flicked through the inventory lists, looking for anything that could be used as a cannon, a slingshot. Why the hell had she never noticed the lack of firepower in this place? A part of her briefly considered plots to take over the colony. Nah, too much work. She wiped the inventory lists off the table. Okay, can we catch it? Vince snapped his fingers. A net! Or a giant airbag. We could use the mylar sheets from the farming dome. One of the groundskeepers shook his head. This hunk of junk would go right through that. Besides, we only have 22 hours now. 21? And nothing to spread the net on. You want to build 3-4 towers in that time? No. We don't let it fall. We go to it. Nanley straightened, set her weight on her good leg, and pointed with her cane. Janice, get me our best maintenance pod that has a grappling hook. The rest of you thugs meet me in the launch bay. Vince, come with me. Vince gave her the same wary look he gave her when she referred to eliminating the evidence. Where are we going? My place. I need to bring something. Her cane punched the floor hard with each bound, pushing her off the floor again before her feet hit. Her hip was killing her. There was one place on the station with a stockpile of weapons at least. Hand it to Vince that he didn't even blink when she pulled out her personal sidearm and a crossbow. He did gawk at the harpoon gun as she laid it across his burdened arms. And what were you going to fish for on the moon? It has sentimental value. Bring it. 20-pound harpoon gun, and she ships it to the moon for sentimental reasons. Vince muttered under his breath as he followed Nanley back down the corridor that led to the maintenance offices. All around them, the alarms were flashing and people hurrying. Most of the small maintenance garage bay was packed with people being loaded onto all available moving equipment. Nanley glared at them. We couldn't stop 'em, boss, Percy said, apologetically. The staff was reconvened around a single repair vehicle. The head mechanic stood atop a wheel. Janice ran a hand through her frizzy brown hair. Look, we don't got a grappling hook per se. We got winches, lots of winches. And you know the Skeeter that has those legs that grab onto shit? She jerked a thumb behind her at the vehicle in question. The Case 35 CBX work platform, which everyone just called the Skeeter because, well, it looked like a mosquito. So I went ahead and secured a winch to the front of this one because, to be honest, boss, if we're talking about saving our own asses, there's no tractor I trust here like my Skeeter. The CBX it is. Who's your best driver? Janice grimaced. Seeing as how we're saving our own asses. Right, you'll drive. Vinny, we need math, so you're coming. What's this transport's top speed, Jen? Please don't call me Vinny, Vince said, still weighed down with Nanley's weapons collection. Load those up. Nanley waved, and 3 people jumped forward to help Vince while Nanley conferred with Janice about acceleration and turning radius. This isn't gonna work, Vince said, checking figures on his pocket computer and comparing them to the Skeeter's dash. Nanley sat at the rear of the small cabin on top of the box that held the rig's one spacesuit, her cane before her like a regal scepter. How far off are we? Jan's pushing the pedal to the metal, but our rendezvous point, we're not going to have a lot of room for air, boss, and I don't think we'll have time to grab it. Looking at the Skeeter's mass versus Saturn's fuselage, it's likely to drag us with it. We'll shorten the distance by shooting it. Nanley patted the harpoon gun on her lap fondly. Figure out what direction we want to force this bastard to go so it misses the colony. Look, no offense, but even your sentimental attachment there does not have the mass to alter a 2-ton rocket's course. Right. Janice, take us that way. She pointed out at the vast gray plain. We'll have thrust on our side. Engine thrust. Energy in place of mass. How much thrust? I don't have this calculated. Do as you're told, Vinny, and this will all go easy. Vince looked nauseous. A kid his age should have more optimism. Nanley handed him her cane and turned her back to him. The cab was only meant to hold 2 people, the driver and a maintenance worker, but it had a little extra room for tools or lunch or whatever you had to bring with you. There wasn't a Vince load of space. While Nanley put on the spacesuit, she had to shove him into Janet's lap. Nanley crawled out the rear airlock. It was by necessity a small thing, designed to be crouched in rather than walked through. Her cane was secured in one of the many tool loops on the walls of the cab. Her hip burned. The game leg always hated being in space. The low pressure, probably. Soon she was hanging off the rear service platform, her harpoon gun raised. The deadly chunk of metal was just a glint, a speck slightly larger than a star as they approached it. It looked so still. Space does a lot to teach you to trust math over your own mind. It was hard, lining up her eye with the sight when she had a bulky helmet on her head, but Nanley felt the old calm spreading through her tired joints. Man, it felt good to be able to shoot your problems. The space relic turned under her eye, presenting a broadside. She pressed the trigger. She felt the jerk in her arms, but it wasn't the same without the sound. Still, she smiled as the harpoon sailed, huge and beautiful. She kept her eye to the magnifying scope. The harpoon looked needle-thin as it bounced harmlessly off the rocket. Nanley threw the harpoon gun at her target. It spun away, then jerked taut on the winch line she'd attached to it. She hauled it in like a fish, tore it off, and let it drift away. Vince pressed his face to the window at the rear of the Skeeter. Over the radio, his voice crackled. Sentimental value? Shut up and put the crossbow in the airlock. Nanley tapped her fingers, fat and noiseless, on the sides of the airlock door while she watched Vince place the crossbow in it and start the cycle. How much time did they have left? Best not to dwell on it. Only think of the job. I told you it wouldn't work, Vince said. She ignored him. She turned over the crossbow, nearly fumbling it out of her hands because of the thick gloves and its lack of weight. Nanley laid the grapple on top of the crossbow bolt and tied the two together with the winch rope. It felt like tying fire hose with chopsticks. The cable was fatter than both the bolt and the grapple. Nanley hoped that in space, everything being weightless and all, the size wouldn't matter and reflex would trump all. The crossbow fired, silently of course. She had to look down to confirm the prod was straight. The winch rope swayed in sine waves after the bolt. Nanley kept her eyes on the target, waiting. The rope waved erratically. The grapple hook glinted as it hit and flew off the top of the fuselage. Nanley hurriedly tugged the rope. The head of the grapple bobbed accordingly, hit and bounced again, hit and bounced and veered off, clear of the target. Shit! Boss? Nanley hit the switch to retract the winch. Never mind, nothing's changed. That was just supposed to buy us more time. Jan, it's all you now. Get these feet on that target. Will do, Jan said. About 18 minutes to rendezvous. You coming in? Asked Vince. No, we need someone out here anyway to spot. Jan can do that with the camera. You don't have to do this. Nanley heard the unspoken plea. You're old and beat up. She snorted. I'm fine. Nanley checked her safety tether once more and unhooked her boots from the platform. Immediately her legs wanted to go up. Stupid legs. Well, she didn't have to worry about them now. She hand-walked down the rungs welded to the CBX's hull, down to one big gangly foot. There she held on, watching as the fuselage chunk got bigger. In space, everything seems far away until it's rushing at you at full speed. Lack of scenery to compare against. So Nanley didn't trust her eyes. She trusted Janice's calculations. When Janice started counting out the last minute, Nanley brought her good leg up in front of her. She felt the vibration when the Skeeter hit the Saturn. Then she swung down, good leg landing hard on the ancient hull. It bucked up against her like a live thing, vibrating. Skeeter's toes flexed like eager baby hands. There's a good hole, 2 feet up, 7 o'clock. The Skeeter wasn't designed to be fast, but it was designed to move in all directions, its jets gambling like googly eyes on top and bottom. 5 degrees more to starboard. No, overshoot. Make that 4. Good, almost there. Flex, now. You got it! There was a satisfying groan as the Skeeter latched on and 2 hurtling objects became one. Now punch it, all you've got. Boss, you coming in? Not on your life. Nanley let go with one hand, letting herself sail free, looking over the hull beneath her, marked with letters and numbers still in a quaint hand, streaked with age. Tons of titanium, and they just threw it away. Those were amazing times when humanity could just waste. A dizzying concept to someone who kept struggling to close the gap on a tiny percentage of lost material. The moon was swelling beneath them, the colony just a lacy little doily in the center of its crater. Barely a freaking 0.1% of the moon's surface, and this hunk of junk had to choose to land on it. They were hurtling headlong for the ground, metal straining as Janice taxed the Skeeter's powers to pull the projectile south. But for all the sensation she felt, Nanley could be standing still. She was so glad she'd retired here. Her radio crackled. We're not going to make it. What do you mean? Nanley turned around to glare at the 2 faces inside the Skeeter. We still don't have enough mass. We're not changing its course enough, I told you. Vince's voice was starting to grate on her. Why do bosses always think they know better? This is physics. I'm not making it up. Disengage. We'll pick up mass. Vince sighed. We have 10 hours until impact, and we need to change the course higher, or we have to change it more. Your point being? We have 1 hour to move this 5 degrees, and it'll take half of that to fly back to the surface. The closer we get to impact, the more mass we need. It will take too long. It will end up more than the Skeeter can carry. So quit stalling, Nanley snapped. Janice, get us to the boulder beds. The only sensible source of ready mass was a pile of discarded material from the digging out of the colony itself. There was a downhill side of the colony, a bit of old crater edge that it sat near, and that was where most of the stone waste was deposited. Nanley stayed on the Skeeter's leg, watching the moon fill her vision, eyeing the shadows for a good-sized chunk. This is better anyway, Nanley said. Skeeter's designed to haul these rocks. I'm thinking we need at least a ton of mass, Vince said. In lunar basalt, that'll be something about the same size we are. Good. Easy to estimate. I don't know if we have the fuel, said Jan. Didn't you fuel all the way up before we left? Yes, but we spent 5 minutes at full throttle trying to move that rocket. There wasn't a lot of time to shop around. Nanley pointed to a lump on the ground as their shadow grew below them. That one. Again, she guided the coupling. This time there was less of a shake on impact, more dust rising. The trip back up to the rocket was nowhere near as adventure-cheerful as the previous one. It was just work now. Work being done a second time, even. The worst kind. "One more problem," Jan said. "The Skeeta don't exactly have a throwing arm. I mean, I can let go. We'll ram it, rock side down. Then you'd better get back in here." Nanley snorted. Still, when Jan started a countdown, she climbed up to the platform, but only because the boulder was blocking her view from the leg strut. She looked back at Vince's worried, sweating face and smiled, locking herself in. The view wasn't good there, too. She twisted around. "Jan, what direction am I look? 3, 2... Either Janice had been off by a second, or Nanley blocked out the one. Suddenly, they were spinning. The moon flashed by in gasps. Nanley yanked back and forth on her tethers like a balloon in a storm. Bile rose at the back of her throat. "Janice, you idiot, we're crashing!" There was no response for a long time. Nanley tried to fight to get around, but then she puked. A slurry of orange and yellow slid across her vision. Slowly, their spin became a wobble, and the moon established itself on one side of them. Yeah, this is gonna be rough." Janice's voice sounded queasy. "I disengaged after impact, but we used up most of the fuel we had left. We are going down. I'm landing her where she lands." "Vinny, are we clear?" There was no response. Nanley hit the airlock window. "Vince!" "The rocket will miss the colony," he said. I think. Dude, I don't know. I don't know if we'll survive the crash. We're not slowing down. Look, you want to do calculations while spinning?" "Jan, aim those jets at the ground." "No, I hadn't thought of that, actually. I just thought we'd go ahead and crash," Janice said. The horizon wobbled frantically as the Skeeter struggled for position. Nanley could only see an oblong swatch of view framed by sick. She felt her lunch rising up her gullet again and closed her eyes. "Everyone, hold on," Janice said, sounding surprisingly calm moments before the impact. The first jolt came from below, so Janice had managed to get their legs under them. But then the ground was sailing merrily in front of Nanley's eyes, and her stomach felt the gravity just fine. Another jolt. Stars swirled, and the ground was coming up again. They were scraping along the ground now. At least they stopped rolling. Nanley undid her tethers. She misjudged the distance and smacked the ground, on her bad hip, naturally. She felt something crunch and struggled to maintain consciousness. But she was, to her own shock, alive. "Jan? Vince?" There was a moment of static. "Vince isn't waking up." Janice's voice was wet with tears. I don't know. We're about a mile south of the colony. Ma'am, we're losing pressure in here." Nanley wriggled around, feeling her legs, her arms, the damn tether tangled around her. "Right, I'll go get help." She was completely blind now, vomit stinging her eyes and sticking her lashes together. She tried to stand, and her left leg crumpled like yarn. Damn that CIA bastard that broke it. She balled a fist and hit the dusty ground in frustration. Anger made it take precious seconds longer than necessary to disengage the safety tether. She blinked and squinted until she saw something through the puree of meals past. Her eyes burned, but she still had a splotch of clear helmet near the top and to the right. She had to keep her head at an angle to get gasps of vision. Something was venting a white plume. One of the research corridors flung out from the edge of the main dome, maybe. Crawling in 16G was a graceless affair, hopping on 3 legs like a wounded jumping beetle. Each time she landed, red flashed before her eyes, but there was no way to cross the space and not jump. She didn't know how much time Janice or Vince had, if Vince was still in a state where time mattered. She tried to guess how many bounces she'd have to survive before she reached the service airlock, a white circle against the dome's solar cell block. She kept her eyes on it and counted. Each flash of red was getting longer. Her breath was wheezing in her ears. All she could think was, "Don't have a stroke. Not now." The white circle split, and the hemispheres parted. She almost fell where she was, her working limbs turning to water with relief. Someone saw and was coming for them. She forced herself to keep going. Bounce. Red. Blink. Bounce. She counted 44 bounces all told before she passed out. She awoke, chilled, and reached down, pulling up a cotton sheet. Tape crinkled against her wrist, holding an IV in place. Nanley laughed. "We must be good. You're wasting time fixing me up." A nurse rushed to her side. "Easy. Don't sit up, you're doing fine." Nanley pushed the nurse away and found the controls to raise the bed. Trey was standing at the foot of it, a vacuum suit on over his usual black suit. "You did good, Nanley. We're all proud of what you and your team accomplished." "Vince? Janice? They're fine. You did my administration a great service, all three of you." "Saved your ass, you mean?" Trey ducked his head. "Oh boy, that's the truth. And you had better believe we're going to find the funds to fix up our object defense. Once we get the damage under control, this could have been so much worse." "The guns that don't work?" "Yes, those." "Hell, Trey, get the U.S. on the horn. It was their hunk of junk. Aren't they responsible? Couldn't we sue?" Trey got a very uncomfortable look on his face. "Boss, what is it?" "The metal is U.S. property. They're claiming salvage rights." Nanley blinked slowly. "What are they sending to claim it? A military ship? I hope it's one of those P-90 space planes." "I didn't ask. I'm afraid to ask why it matters." Nanley's smile was dagger sharp. "Because after I hit it with the rock, it'll be trash." A nurse grabbed Nanley's shoulder, stopping her from rising. Trey waved him off. "Nan, hun, let's back up a step. I've always wanted a 4th-generation encryption cube. I'll be sure to hit the ship from the aft. They want to come claim that too? They'll find I can play this game as long as they can." "How about we call the U.S. back and I have you there for the negotiation?" Nanley chewed her lip. It did sound like less work. "You should have had me there to start with." "I'll take that as a yes. Don't get up and do anything until I've come back." Nanley enjoyed few things as much as a properly afraid superior officer. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and looked for her cane. "And fix those guns," she said.
Once again, that was Trash by Marie Vibbert. I loved how this story gave us an older woman protagonist with a less than spotless past, whose leadership and problem-solving skills extend far beyond mopping up simple spills. Cleaning dangerous messes is a common enough plotline, but it's less common for the cleaners to be actual janitors. Certain classes of people can be overlooked in fiction, as in real life, fading into the background as they go about the menial tasks that are nonetheless utterly necessary to keep the gears of society turning smoothly. Waste management may not seem like a big deal, but as this story shows us, sometimes our survival relies on someone stepping up to take out the trash. Escape Pod is part of the Escape Artists Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Don't change it. Don't sell it. Please do share it. If you'd like to support Escape Pod, please rate or review us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite app. We are 100% audience supported, and we count on your donations to keep the lights on and the servers humming. You can now donate via 4 different platforms. On Patreon and Ko-fi, search for Escape Artists. On Twitch and YouTube, we're at EA Podcasts. You can also use PayPal through our website, escapehub.org. Patreon subscribers have access to exclusive merchandise and can be automatically added to our Discord, where they can chat with other fans as well as our staff members. Our opening and closing music is by Daikaiju at daikaiju.org. And our closing quotation this week is from Guillermo del Toro, who said, "That's the thing about being a janitor, or maid, any type of custodian. You glide unseen, like a fish underwater." Thanks for joining us, and may your escape pod be fully stocked with stories.